Hello guys, this is Akshay JH, and in the last part I told you guys how we are going to work with Firebase list adapter in this part, but I was thinking and it is good idea to do something that makes more sense now instead of using list view adapters. So I thought maybe we can do a user sign in process, so it will make more sense, and then we can continue about the list views later in next part or maybe after that. So in this part we're going to work with user sign in. So first of all, what I want you, to do is go to docs and let it load, then go to get started guide for Android, and you may see that get started Android, there are all the dependencies. So in this we're going to need to use the Firebase auth. So as you can see that in the app Gradle, I've already implemented this one here and my sync is finished. Now make sure that your version matches with other libraries of Firebase. So if your database is 9.2.0, then your auth should be 9.2.0 as well. Then next thing you need to do is go back to your console and go to the auth section over here. So now this is the place where all your users will be stored. So one thing you need to do before proceeding, you go to the sign in method, this tab over here, and you can see that there are few methods that you can implement in your app. First one is email and password. So now we're gonna take a look at email and password first because this is the easiest one. Then we're gonna move to the Google and Facebook, Twitter, else other things. So first of all, in this part we're gonna take a look at email and password. So what you need to do, click on this one and make sure you enable this. Now click save. If your email password sign-in provider is disabled, then you may not be able to access this one. So now you can go back to your users table, and now let's open up Android Studio. So I have my main activity over here, and let's start making the UI. So for that we need email edit text box. Let's expand it, match parent. Then we need a password. Now in this part we're just covering the functioning of login, and in the next part we're also going to design this login page, and then we'll move for some other features. Alright, so I'm going to add a button. Okay, now let's select the relative layout and add padding to it. I'm going to give 20 dp of padding, and for this one I'm going to use margin top of a few dp, and this two let's add for this one as well. Alright, so let's change the IDs of all these fields. So this is going to be email field. Now next is going to be password field, and the login button. Now let's change the text, and hint for this one is going to be email, password, and text for this one is going to be login. Alright, so we have created the layout. Now it's time to proceed with our JavaScript file. So go to your main activity.java and make sure that you have already created an application class, and you have included Firebase.set Android context to this, and also you have included in the wired up with the manifest file. Now let's go back to our main activity class, and first thing that I want to create is a private Firebase. Okay, let's first add our input fields. So edit text, first one is going to be email field, private edit text, password field, and then we have a button. Let's say login button. Okay, so imports. Okay, now let's connect the references. So email field equals edit text, find view by id, r.id dot, and we assign the id of email field. Then we have password field, and it's also an edit text. So find view by id, and this is the password field. All right, now next thing we have the login button. Okay, so we got our connections here. Now let's create an on-click listener for the login button. So first of all, login button dot set on-click listener, then new on-click listener. So our on-click listener is ready. Now we need to create a function that's gonna work for the sign in. So private void start sign in. All right, so in this for sign in we need two strings. So first is going to be email, and that's going to be m email field dot get text to string. So this is we are converting to string the text that user will input for the inside the fields. Okay, so get text dot to string. Now we have created the string variables for email and password. Now it's time to set up the Firebase auth object. So I'm going to go over here, private Firebase auth, and it's going to be auth. And next thing what we need to do, if you go to the docs of Firebase, and if you come down to the authentication section inside Android, go to password authentication. All right, just give it a second. Sometime it takes a little time to open it up, but okay, I don't know what happened, but it's working now. Now they say that you need to include this dependency, and then there is private Firebase auth create and blah blah blah. What we need is we have this over here. So this is exactly the code for signing in the user, but let me tell you real quick. First of all, we need to set and reference for mauth, and that is Firebase auth dot get instance. So now we have mauth set up. Now let's go back to our sign in method, and let's call this method when user clicks on login button. So I'm going to say start sign in. All right, okay, so this method is called when user clicks on login button. So now inside this method we can create our sign in function. So auth dot sign in with email and password. So now if you don't see these, that means your Firebase auth is not implemented right. You might want to check out that. So sign in with email and password. Now it's gonna we need to pass two parameters. First one is the email, second is the password. Now after this, what we need is add on complete listener for this one. So inside this new on complete listener, now the on complete listener is ready. What it does, it just checks the status of the task that proceeded right now. So inside this, if we create an if statement, so if, all right, where's the I key? Okay, if task, now task is this variable over here inside which the results are stored. So if task dot is successful, that means the user has logged in, successfully logged in, but we don't want to check that. We want if he hasn't logged in. So I'm going to say if task is not successful, then what it should do is toast dot make text, and context is going to be main activity dot this, and then we have our text message sign in problem and after that toast dot length long dot show. All right, so the main process is ready, but one thing is there, that if user leaves the field blank, it may cause an error while signing in. So we need to make sure that user doesn't leave the fields blank. So I'm going to create an if statement for that, and we're going to type in here text utils dot is empty email, or text utils dot is empty password. So any of these fields are empty, that means this code should not proceed. So I'm going to cut this and paste it inside the else statement. So this code should only work if the fields are not empty. So if fields are empty, I'm going to just create a toast for that, and we can create the UI in the later parts. Next part, obviously, fields are empty. All right, so the basic process is here. One more thing we need to include, and that is auth state listener. And basically what it does, it checks if user has already logged in or not, and it's basically called whenever the auth state is changed. So if user has not logged in, and if you try to log in, then the auth state changes and that function is called. So to create that, if you go over to these docs, and obviously you're gonna see it somewhere around here. So yeah, here it is. So private auth listener you need to create, then assign it to this. So let's create this auth listener. So come down here, private Firebase auth state listener, and auth listener. Then inside our onCreate method, let's say auth state listener equals new Firebase auth state listener. All right, so inside this our next thing is if Firebase auth, and that is this variable dot get current user, and if that's equal to null, that means the user has not logged in, that it hasn't find any user for that. So if that's null, that's okay, this page should load. But if that is not null, that means the user has logged in, and in that case we don't want user to stay on this page. So for that we need to create one more activity file. So I'm going to right click on my layout, create new activity, and that's going to be an empty activity, and this is going to be account. Okay, not here, let's right click activity, empty activity. Okay, so this is going to be account. All right, so let's hit finish, and our account activity is ready. And inside this I'm going to put just a simple plain text just for right now, but we can change it later. All right, so in the main activity, if the user is logged in, then we're gonna say start activity and new intent from main activity dot this is the context to account activity dot class. So if the user has already logged in, then it should create an intent and move us to the account activity page. All right, so it's time for us to test the app, but there's one more thing that you need to include, and that's on start we need to make sure that we call that auth state listener dot auth changed, and that's where Firebase auth goes. Let me check the code quickly. Yeah, that's all right. All right, so if that this is good, but we are getting some error. All right, okay, this is not on auth state changed. Add let me check again. Sorry about that. So this is basically we are doing for this is our variable mauth, and we need to add an auth state listener to this one, and the auth state listener is this one. All right, so let's come down here. So mauth dot add auth state listener, and it's mauth listener. All right, so that's how you finish the code, and let's hit run and let's see if the code works. So let me unlock my phone, hit the run button, select your device. Now before it builds the Gradle file, let's go to the Firebase console, and now see that you don't have any users yet. So now it's time to add a new user. So I'm going to create click on this add user button, and let's create a new one. All right, okay, so add user, and now the user is added. Now you see that there is a user now in our app. So let's see if the Gradle build is finished. Okay, it may take a little time, but that's okay. Now make sure that you don't do any mistakes in the code, because it's quite complicated for beginning, but you'll get used to it. If you are a beginner, don't worry about that. This is just a very simple code. All you need to do is understand what goes where and why. That's the whole process. And if you forget any code, there's always the documentation. You can check password authentication. And in next part, we can also create, even if you guys want to try it by yourself, there's the code for how creating the account with email and password. You can try it by yourself, and if you get any problems, you can comment it. And obviously I'm going to record this create account tutorial in later parts, maybe 2 or 3 parts later, but that's okay. Then we have Google sign in and all left. We're going to move to that little later. So let's see if okay, I'm going to swipe it from my phone. Still installing the APK. I guess I need to pause this video here and play again, but it should finish it by the time, right? Okay, so now it worked. Sorry about the delay. Okay, so my app is running over here. Now you can see that we got the fields of email and password. Let's type in something wrong, so let's leave it blank. If I click, fields are empty. Let's type in the email, and let me type the password, something wrong. Let's click on login. This is the sign-in problem. Let's type in the correct password. Let's click on login, and now it changes the account. Now there's obviously a few things that you need to create, and like creating the progress bar, changing the UI, and intent flags so that user won't be able to go back. And obviously there are a few more things, like in the account you need to also check the auth state, if user has logged in or not. So we will be proceeding to those things in later parts, but for this tutorial you just try out the create account, and we will be seeing you guys later. So keep learning.